Hello and welcome to the Necron series, and this video is going to be a rather quick one. It's just going to be an update to the recent rule changes that were published by Games Workshop on November 9th of 2021. The changes are rather short, but very impactful to how Necrons play, and the changes Necron saw is that the following units received the core keyword, being the Canoptic Reanimator, the Canoptic Wraiths, Flayed Ones, both types of Locust Destroyers, Ophidian Destroyers, Scorpic Destroyers, and Triarch Praetorians. And that's all of the changes. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Now, wouldn't end the video there, would I now, without taking a look in terms of how these changes impact how the Necrons play. And I will say that these changes are going to change quite a lot in terms of how the Necrons are utilized, but I think a lot of the same stuff will still be very good. It's just that certain other things have also become a lot better as well at the same time. Though one thing I'll mention is that these changes probably impact the Triarch Praetorians the least, because the Triarch Praetorians don't have the Dynasty keyword, and a lot of different core benefits are locked behind that Dynasty keyword, making it so that the Triarch Praetorians don't benefit as much. However, there are some key instances where the Triarch Praetorians benefit quite a bit. Now let's take a look at the different parts of the Necron Codex that are impacted by these changes. To begin with, we're going to start by looking at the different stratagems that care about the core keyword. The first of the stratagems we're going to look at is Prismatic Dimensional Breach and Dimensional Corridor. Both these stratagems are mobility stratagems that are rather cheap and are used with a Night Scythe or Monolith, thus giving even more mobility to the Necron forces, though I don't think mobility was ever an issue. However, having the ability to teleport some of these units is going to be very beneficial in certain situations. Though I should mention that the changes to the universal rules did change how flyers work, so you can only include a limited number of flyer models with an army list now, and as such, you'd only be able to include 2 flyers within a 2,000 point game. So you are a little bit limited in terms of how you could utilize the Night Scythe, which is probably the flyer that got the most benefit from the recent rule changes. In any case, I don't think the flyer changes will really impact how Necrons play, though I can see the Night Scythe potentially seeing a little bit more play under these new rules, as now it can teleport things like the Scorpic Destroyers and even Locust Destroyers just to reposition them a little bit using that stratagem. There's one other stratagem that really cares about core units, and this one is actually a rather important one, which is called Disruption Fields, and this stratagem adds 1 strength to a unit of Necron core models, and this benefits quite a few of your different choices very significantly, as all of a sudden the Scorpic Destroyers go up to 6 strength and 8 strength respectively, depending on the weapon they're armed with, and those are very important breakpoints, as all of a sudden they have a much easier time dealing with some of those Toughness 5 units, as well as Toughness 3 and Toughness 4 units, depending on which weapon you care about. The Canoptic Wraiths do benefit from this, but not as much, considering it only really benefits their Whip Coil profile, which now has Strength 5. However, those Whip Coils are actually a lot more frightening when they're Strength 5 as opposed to Strength 4, considering that 5 Strength is another one of those major breaking points, considering how much Toughness 5 units there are in the game. Then for the Triarch Praetorians also go up to 6 strength. In addition to that, the Ophidians armed with the Reap Blades as well as the Flayed Ones go up to strength 5. Once again, remember that strength 5 is a very important breakpoint. However, a lot of those strength 5 cases, the weapons in question have a rather low armor penetration rating, so it doesn't exactly push them to the status of being incredibly powerful, though it definitely gives these units a lot more capability to deal with some enemy units in ways that they couldn't easily do before, and it does open up the stratagem to a lot of applications that you're going to find very useful in your different games, as Necrons have quite a lot of mobility and quite a lot of melee capability, so having the ability to increase strength on so many different units is very powerful. Now after the stratagems come the traits, relics, and arcana, and there aren't too many options that are affected by this, but there are some that benefit, so it's good to point those out. The first of those is a trait known as Impeccable Conquerors, and Impeccable Conquerors gives an aura that says friendly Dynasty core units within 6 inches of the bearer can reroll the charge roll when making a charge. This is actually incredibly good because all of a sudden those Scorpic Destroyers, Canoptic Wraiths, and Flayed Ones, and whatever else you would like to include that has the Dynasty keyword, can all of a sudden make those charges significantly more easily. And as this is an aura ability, you can do quite a few different tricks by positioning the bearer in such a way to benefit multiple units, and anytime you can reroll charge rolls on melee heavy armies, it's definitely a major benefit, and I think this is going to be one of those traits that could potentially see a lot of use if melee armies start taking off again. After that, there are 2 different relics that have the core keyword, the first one of those being Veil of Darkness, and Veil of Darkness has always been a rather good ability, though now it's even better, and it's still one of the strongest relics within the game as a whole, so definitely increasing its power level gives it so much more application. I don't think it's that massive of a power increase, because I don't think being able to reposition a unit of Locust Destroyers or a unit of Scorpic Destroyers is quite as powerful as teleporting a unit of Necron Warriors armed with Gauss Reapers close to an enemy or into a specific position. Though that being said, it does give you a lot of ability to protect a unit of Locust Destroyers in lists that are not utilizing large Necron Warrior squads, and thus that opens a lot of capability for the Veil of Darkness to see play in lists that it normally didn't see as much use in. And the second relic that has the core keyword is the Sovereign Coronola, and what the Sovereign Coronola does is it allows a core unit to benefit from both active protocols, which is perfectly okay, but as I mentioned in the video where we covered the protocols aren't particularly the best thing in the world, so it's not like you're getting that massive of a benefit, so it's definitely not something you really want to over-focus on, and I think they're just better relics to choose from. Now in terms of Arcana, there are two different options that care about core units. The first one being the Hypermaterial Ablator, which did see a little bit of play, and this piece of Arcana gives a core or canoptic unit light cover against enemy shooting that is coming from 12 inches or further. And this is one of those Arcanas that's not particularly amazing, but it's one that can do some work, though it's always nice to protect those Locust Destroyers just that little bit more. And then there's one other Arcana that did see play, which was known as the Phlectron Hive. The Phlectron Hive was a Technomancer only Arcana, and this Arcana allowed the Technomancer to use his right to reanimation ability once per game, targeting a unit of destroyers or canoptic units. However, now that all of those units are naturally core, the Technomancer actually has seen a massive buff, and I think the Technomancer is probably the biggest winner in this recent rules change, as all of a sudden he has a massive number of amazing targets for his right to reanimation ability, and the Technomancer was already seeing play, and in some cases even seeing play with the Phlectron Hive. So now that he essentially has a 20-point upgrade that used to be only usable once per game but can now be used every single turn, I do think the Technomancer is probably going to see quite a lot more play, and he's one of the better cryptic choices now that he has the ability to target so many more units for his special ability. And speaking of different buffs that characters can give to your forces, there are quite a few different buffs that different HQ choices can give to the Necron forces that benefit from the addition of the core keyword to a lot of these units. Let's look at the general abilities first, and then the special character abilities. The first of the general abilities is Relentless March, which helps with mobility, but might be a little bit awkward considering that the Necron Lord does not move quite as fast as a lot of these new units. However, with that being said, something that would be rather interesting is the Catacomb Command Barge supporting a unit of Canoptic Race, as both of them have a 12-inch mobility, or the Catacomb Command Barge supporting the Scorpic Destroyers, considering that they can keep up rather well, but the Catacomb Command Barge would have to move a little bit slower than normal, though I do think the benefits are there, and I think we're going to see more Catacomb Command Barges moving around the table, along with those Canoptic Cloak Technomancers, who can also keep up rather well with a lot of the units that they can benefit. In addition to that, the My Will Be Done ability is actually rather powerful now, considering that it can now target Locust Destroyers, making it so that they hit on a 2+, as well as rerolling ones thanks to the Hardwired for Destruction ability that they have naturally, thus making them incredibly accurate. And Locust Destroyers of both types were already on the rise in terms of how much play they saw, so I think that you're going to be seeing quite a lot more Locust Destroyers within different lists thanks to this change, as all of a sudden their accuracy and survivability increased so much thanks to things like the Technomancer and the Veil of Darkness. So I definitely think the Locust Destroyers are probably one of the bigger winners in this situation as well. Then there's the Lord's Will, which can help out Flayed Ones and Canoptic Race with the benefit of rerolling ones to hit, as they don't naturally have any ability like Hardwired for Destruction built into their kit. This is once again a rather good ability, but it's only available on a very limited number of characters, making it a little bit harder to find access to, so I don't think this is going to be quite as relevant as My Will Be Done or Relentless March, which is available on a lot more HQ choices than the Lord's Will is. So as such, I don't think you're going to see that much utilization of it, but this does give the basic Necron Lord a little bit more viability, and as we saw with the list in the recent video I put out in the new series called On the Fringe, the Necron Lord does see some occasional play in certain situations. And finally, there are three special characters that do care about the core keyword. The first of those special characters is Enriquer the Traveler, who became a lot stronger now as he can buff way more units with his Lord of the Parian Legions ability, which now gives +1 attack to so many great melee options, whereas before it could really only target the Lich Guard, which was rather limiting considering the Lich Guard didn't really need the benefits of this ability in order to be very powerful within melee. So all of a sudden being able to buff something like the Scorpic Destroyers or Canoptic Wraiths is a very big deal, and Enriquer the Traveler was already rather decent before this, but didn't have that many buff targets, so it made him feel rather limited at times, as you were paying for a rather powerful ability that only had a very narrow application. However, now that it's unlocked, I can definitely see Enriquer the Traveler seeing some play, and do notice that this ability is not Dynasty locked and combos rather well with the Disruption Field stratagem that we mentioned previously. So I definitely see a world in which Enriquer the Traveler does show up in a top 4 list at some point, even though it might not be right away. Then another special character that saw quite a massive increase in terms of power level is Illuminor Szeras, and the biggest winner from Illuminor Szeras' ability are the Triarch Praetorians, as they have a really good melee and shooting profile, meaning that they can benefit the most, as all three of the modifications that Illuminor Szeras can give out do benefit the Triarch Praetorians no matter which one he reduces. So if Illuminor Szeras goes to buff the Triarch Praetorians, he'll always give them something beneficial, as opposed to having a 1 in 3 chance to generate a potentially dead ability that doesn't benefit the unit or benefits them in a very minor way. Though even beyond the Triarch Praetorians, Illuminor Szeras also benefits from having way more targets throughout the course of the game, considering his ability to trigger his augmentation by destroying an enemy model within combat, and do notice that says enemy model, not enemy unit, so this ability has a lot of chances at triggering within the fight phase, and in the past it was very possible to run out of targets for his augmentation ability. Though not only does he have more targets, but he now also has a lot of amazing melee targets to choose from, so all of a sudden he has a lot more opportunities to utilize this ability on units like Scorpic Destroyers and the like. Not only that, but having so many additional targets to choose from with this ability, even in the situation you generate one of those 3 benefits that doesn't really benefit the unit that you're targeting, it's not quite as big of a deal as it was before, considering this ability now applies to so many more targets, and you're going to have a lot more chances to utilize this ability, thus gaining more benefit out of it. So as a result of this, Illuminor Szeras actually has so much more power level now to justify his points cost that I definitely think Illuminor Szeras is probably going to appear a lot more on the battlefield, considering how much power this change gave him, and I can see a world where Illuminor Szeras becomes a top pick for a lot of different lists if he really does take off, as he has a lot of different abilities, and even before this change, he was seeing some level of play in top tournament lists, though very rarely because of his augmentation ability, though now that it's going to be a lot more consistent due to the amount of times he can use it, I think that really does help him out. And the last character that benefits from these changes is Necrons Xandric, who got a bit of a minor buff, so if you want to utilize a special ability, you have to be within the Sotek dynasty, which isn't the worst, but isn't the best, and do keep in mind that his ability is similar to that of Illuminor Szeras, but because he is dynasty locked, he can't target Triarch Praetorians, so he is a little weaker in that sense as well. However, Necrons Xandric was always an interesting model that people thought had potential in the past, so maybe the ability to target more different units is going to give him a little bit more opportunity to see play, though in my opinion, I don't think he's going to be quite as popular as Illuminor Szeras due to the limitations, forced dynasty choices, and the fact that Illuminor Szeras' augmentation is a little bit more potent than that of Necrons Xandric, though Necrons Xandric and Illuminor Szeras bring very different things to the table, so I can definitely see a situation where both of them see play at some point within top tournament lists. With that being said, I do think the Necron forces have gotten a lot stronger, and this is definitely a step in the right direction, though I do still think that they still have some other problems that need to be addressed, such as their high points value and sometimes the restrictiveness of the different choices that they have, considering they do lack in some certain situations. And while these benefits did benefit quite a few different units, I think the biggest winner is definitely melee Necron lists, as all of a sudden they have a lot of different ways of benefiting those offensive units, whether it's stratagems, traits, or characters, and as such, I think we're probably going to see some more melee-focused Necron lists showing up within different tournaments. Though with that being said, I do think we'll still see a lot of the same as we've seen in the past, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of innovations these changes spark within the different Necron players. And do let me know in the comments below how you think some of these changes will change how you'll be building your Necron lists. And as always, if you've enjoyed the content, like and subscribe, as it really does help the channel out. And if you get the opportunity, please do share the channel, as that not only massively helps the channel, but also helps the people who may discover it and benefit from the content. I would also like to give a quick shout out to my patrons. You guys are awesome people. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. And regardless if you're a patron or not, thank you for watching and have a great day.